There's something deeply unsettling about this case. Imagine sitting on death row for nearly 40 years, your execution date finally set, the clock literally ticking down, and then, at the last possible moment, everything stops. Not because you were proven innocent, but because of a piece of evidence that was never tested. Now here's the question that's dividing everyone. What if the system got it completely wrong? Before we get into this, do me a quick favor. If you're into real cases like this, hit that like button and subscribe, because stories like this don't just shock you, they stay with you. It all started on a quiet night in 1987. 11-year-old Teresa McAbee had just stepped out of a small convenience store. Nothing unusual, just a normal night. But within minutes, she vanished. The last people to see her alive weren't strangers. They weren't suspicious men lurking in the shadows. It was a police officer. His name was James Duckett. According to witnesses, Duckett approached Teresa outside the store. He spoke to her, then told her to get into his patrol car. They assumed he was helping her. After all, he was the police. But instead of taking her home, he drove off into the night, and that moment would become the center of one of the most disturbing cases in Florida's history. But what investigators discovered the next day made things even darker. Less than 24 hours later, a fisherman made a horrifying discovery. Teresa's body was found near the edge of Night Lake. What had happened to her wasn't just tragic, it was brutal. Investigators said she had been assaulted, strangled, and then drowned. The entire community was shaken. A child had been taken and killed by someone she should have been able to trust. And almost immediately, all eyes turned back to one man, James Duckett. But what made this case even more intense was the evidence that seemed to stack up against him. At first glance, it looked like an open and shut case. Investigators found tire tracks near the scene, tracks that matched the type used by mascot police vehicles. Then came the palm prints. Teresa's prints were found on the hood of Duckett's patrol car. And then, the detail that seemed to seal his fate. A hair in Teresa's underwear, which an FBI agent claimed matched Duckett. On top of that, multiple witnesses said they saw him drive away with her. And as if that wasn't enough, prosecutors brought in testimony from other young women who claimed Duckett had made inappropriate advances on duty. Everything pointed in one direction. Everything except one thing. The truth wasn't as clean as it seemed. Because almost immediately, cracks began to appear. Duckett denied everything. He claimed he never took Teresa to the lake, never harmed her, never committed the crime. And then came the inconsistencies. Despite the claim that he had driven to a muddy lakeside area, there was no mud in his car, no blood, no physical signs of a struggle. Even more strange, witnesses later saw him shortly after midnight, and he appeared completely clean. Then there was the forensic evidence. At the time, hair analysis was considered reliable, but years later, that same method would be heavily criticized, with experts admitting it wasn't as accurate as once believed. So now the question started to shift. Was this solid evidence or just convincing enough? But despite these doubts, the court moved forward. In 1988, James Duckett was found guilty. He was sentenced to death. And just like that, his fate was sealed. Years turned into decades, appeal after appeal, denied. And through it all, Duckett never changed his story. He maintained his innocence every single time. Nearly 40 years passed. Most people stopped paying attention. The case faded into the background, until something unexpected happened. Something that could change everything. For decades, one piece of evidence sat untouched, a DNA sample taken from Teresa's clothing. It had never been tested, not once. But now, nearly 4 decades later, that changed. Duckett's legal team pushed for DNA testing, arguing it could finally reveal the truth. And surprisingly, the state didn't fight it. They agreed, because even they admitted it could make a difference. That's when everything shifted.
His execution date was set. The clock was ticking, and just days before it was supposed to happen, the Florida Supreme Court stepped in. They halted the execution, not because he was cleared, but because the DNA results hadn't come back yet. Think about that for a second. A man came within days of being executed, while critical evidence had never even been examined. And now, everything hangs on what that DNA reveals. But just when you think the story couldn't get more complicated, it does. Because Teresa may not have been the only victim linked to Duckett. There were other cases that still raise questions to this day. In 1986, a young woman was found in a water-filled ditch. She had been strangled. Witnesses said she was last seen getting into a dark blue car. At the time, Duckett owned a blue Buick Regal. Then, in 1987, another victim, 14-year-old Jennifer Weldon. Her body was found in a remote area. She had also been assaulted. And here's where it gets unsettling. Before she disappeared, she was seen carrying a green shopping bag with a stuffed toy. Later, Duckett's wife told investigators he came home with a similar item. But despite these connections, no charges were ever filed. No conclusions were ever reached. Just more questions and more uncertainty. Now, everything comes down to one thing: the DNA. If it matches Duckett, then it confirms what many believed all along. But if it doesn't, then this becomes something far more disturbing. It means a man may have spent nearly 40 years on death row for something he didn't do. And even worse, the real person responsible was never caught. That's the part that keeps people up at night, because this isn't just one case. It raises a much bigger question. How many others are out there? How many cases that looked certain were actually built on shaky ground? And how close has the system come to making a mistake it can't undo? Because in this case, we almost didn't get the chance to find out. If this story got you thinking, drop a comment below. Do you believe he's guilty, or could this be one of the biggest mistakes in recent history? And if you want more real cases that make you question everything, you already know what to do.